Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and thanks for stopping by. Our dedicated team will guide you through with the latest updates and theories at Starbase, Texas. If you're new to the channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon for future streams.
Hello, everybody. My name is Zach Golden, and welcome to another Starbase Weekly live stream. I'm joined this week by BJ. BJ, thanks for being here with us.
Glad to be back. It's been a few shows since I've been able to join, and I'm looking forward to looking at what we've got. It's a little wet out there today.
Yeah, I'm always hearing, oh, BJ's going to be here with us this week, and then it doesn't happen. I'm like, oh.
Yeah, there's been a few of those lately.
Yeah, it's all good. Know how that goes. But yeah, it will just be the two of us today. I don't think we have Astro Joe with us, so I will be probably handling questions. So just bear with me if I take a while to get to them. But yeah, and also another thing for this week, as y'all can tell, we did a low altitude flyover due to the weather conditions. So some of the shots, especially like the launch site and parts of the build site, are a little bit more difficult to see. So for that reason, we aren't going to try and like force the show to be longer. And so kind of probably going to be a little bit shorter of an episode today and just kind of cover the things that we are able to see and answer questions from this week. So yeah, with that, we'll go ahead and hop into the episode, and we'll start off as always at Massey's. Actually, you know what? I think there's some other things that, no, I'll go to them after this. Yeah, we'll start at Massey's. So yeah, we have, as most of y'all probably know, ship 30.
Yep, ship 30.
It's been getting harder and harder to just pull it out and say the right one. Yeah, ship 30 performed its second static fire test yesterday, and that was the first static fire for ship 30 at the Massey's test site. And yeah, this one was a lot more aggressive, I would say, than what we saw with ship 26. And we're going to show some footage from it here in a minute, but just some. Actually, no, we'll show the footage first and then talk about it after. Kind of makes a little more sense. So we have some really cool shots from Anthony Gomez. I don't know if I'm going to try and get the audio to come through on this. So give me 1 second.
Yeah, I think it was. I think you had it there. I at least heard it when you
Uh,
mentioned
I think that was coming through my microphone.
it.
Yeah. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna have to
Yeah, it
mute
was
myself.
definitely, with only being the second time we've seen a static fire on the stand, it definitely trying to figure out the timings of things and just kind of getting a feel for how they're going to use that stand is
Right.
going to be a learning process here for a few more static fires at least.
I'm gonna mute myself while I play this so it doesn't come in twice. So you know what? I think
I
he
don't think
also
you have
had a
it.
better one from the Rocket Ranch camera. This one, and sorry, did the audio come through? I wasn't.
I did not hear the audio with it on that one, but yeah, the plume on that shot from the river was really nice to see.
Yeah, if it's not gonna pull in the audio, then that's fine. But one thing, if y'all go and check this out for yourself, um, it was posted on Rocket Ranch's uh, Twitter account or on X, and you can really hear the audio really well. This one kind of gets blown out a little bit because I think it's just how close the um, microphone is, but it's really cool because you can actually hear both ignition events. So there's the three center engines and then the RVACs that happen after that. So I'll play it again right here. This is the other camera they have. I'm gonna turn that audio off. Yeah, this is awesome because you can see the way that the when the second engines ignite or the RVACs, you have like two separate explosions. There's the second one right there. So that's crazy watching that and then seeing all of the vapors get pulled down into it.
Yeah, I was watching this cam, and also I think I was watching Rover One. It was funny, the syncing of the two streams on YouTube was off, so like I knew when this one was coming because it was delayed by a good 5. I think it was done on Rover or on Rocket Ranch Lab cam before it even hit the Rocket Ranch cam.
Wow.
And then the shake was hilarious because it was like we hit engine shutdown almost before we actually started seeing the cameras shake from the vibrations.
Yeah, we have another shot here by Jack Byer who posted this on X as well too. Jack always has really great quality videos, so this is going to be pretty awesome right here and from a different angle as well too. Yeah, this is I think at like 120 frames per second possibly. So it's slowed down, which is really cool because you can see that second ignition a lot better.
Yeah, with the high speed that they've been doing, that Jack's been using on a lot of these static fires, he can slow it down and you can really see how everything develops.
Yeah, and I guess one of the biggest things. Oh wow, look at those shockwaves in the.
Yeah, I was just noticing that too.
Yeah, and I guess one of the biggest questions that most people have is how did the tiles fare this time around? And I think in general, the shock on the vehicle just seems completely different. You don't see the well, I guess you do see a little bit of vapor cloud come off of it, but it's nowhere near as much as it normally does, or as it did when they were doing this on the suborbital test stands. So, you know, I don't think I saw any tiles fall off of this thing, and I'm not sure if anybody's gotten any ground images of it since the static fire happened. But I mean, from this angle, it looks like everything turned out pretty well.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the fact that the plume goes away and just that extra distance that they have before it gets down into the trench just directs all those forces away, as opposed to that. I mean, the suborbital pad, it just kind of threw everything straight back at the vehicle.
Yeah, this is an incredible shot for sure. So yeah, we'll go back to the aerial shots though. Um, so I think this may be the only static fire that ship 30 will need to perform. So this was basically because they swapped out one of the RVAC engines. So they had to redo their static fire test. And this is also after they stripped all of the tiles and um, added the underlayer on them, and then added all the new tiles, which are supposed to be 2 times stronger. So, yeah, exciting times. And I think we're getting closer and closer to that Flight 5 attempt. But I think one thing about Flight 5 that we're still waiting on is the new launch license. So, as far as we know, they are still in the process of amending the launch license so that they can uh, land the booster back at the launch site. So that basically changes the details of that launch license. So they're still waiting on that. Um, so I think that's probably going to be the biggest delay right now for the next launch. But there are also other activities that are going on in the meantime, which probably have to be completed first. So we'll probably touch on those as we get to the launch site.
Yeah, they're definitely getting closer on that, but yeah, having to change that license, and I think they're just using some of this time to make sure that they got everything ready for that to make that successful. Because it seems like the chopsticks need just a little more time, so they've got a window yet. I think the interesting part about the static fire, it was interesting because for just the one engine, based on like what we saw with was it ship 28 that also had the engine swap, that they only did the spin prime. That
Right.
I think because 26 was the only ship that's ever static fired here, I almost feel like they were working with some of their static fire processes with this one, and why they went all the way instead of just doing a spin prime with that new engine.
Yeah. I mean, that's also just an interesting thing to point out in general is that they didn't perform a spin prime before the static fire. So, well, I guess that's also true for 26, right? Or did they perform it? Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. So I wonder if they've just kind of eliminated that from the testing process at this point.
Yeah, I mean, looking at like prop loads, I mean, even the fact that we saw a methane frost line during yesterday's static fire, it almost seems like they were kind of using that test to think about some other things moving forward to future ship static fires.
Yeah, and was another interesting thing to note was that the frost level on the ship was a bit higher than it was on previous tests. So, one of the things that I noticed, I mean, and it's difficult to say just because it's on a completely different test stand, but it seemed like number one, the static fire was longer, longer duration, and also the RVAC startup seemed a lot more powerful than what we see on the suborbital test stand. So, I do wonder if this stand kind of what we've been speculating would happen kind of allows them to ramp up that thrust a little bit more than they were able to on the suborbital test stands.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense with just the ability to not have those forces coming back. They were limited on what they could do without creating even a larger amount of damage to the vehicle.
Yeah, agreed. Um, so yeah, I guess next for ship 30 would probably be to roll back to the launch, or sorry, the Mega Bay 2. Um, I think they still have a little bit more work to do on it. Are there a few missing tiles still? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean they've got the ones around the tie downs there, and then obviously they've got those ones that are along the seam to the aft flaps that they haven't dealt with, and there's a few here and there it looks like as well. I think those two in the middle at the bottom might be something related to how they did that tile testing on 28 or on 29.
Oh yeah, because these are almost in the same locations, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's what it seems like to me. So I wonder if they're so that they can do an A/B comparison between the two flights with different tile systems.
Hmm. But I mean, this area that's being left uncovered is still essentially the same, right? It's not like they have, or do they have that ablative material underneath it? They probably do, right?
It's hard to say. I would imagine that they took it all the way down, but being the aft section not being a tank, I could see them maybe not doing the ablative. But they did. We remember they did put the ablative material under those couple tiles on 29, so it could be plausible that that ablative layer goes all the way down to the bottom.
Right. Yeah, I think that would probably make the most sense. Especially with it being on the bottom side of the vehicle, probably gets pretty hot down there. So, yeah. So moving on, we also have another test article that's down here, which is, oh man, is this
Test tank 16.
okay? Yeah, I was gonna call it 24.1, but that's the other one. That's what it's called, Test Tank 16.
Yeah, it's pretty much what the going name is. It's the 16th test tank that's been seen. We haven't seen any official names on anything from SpaceX to be told otherwise, so it seems to be what everybody's calling it. At least that's what I've been calling it.
I'm surprised there aren't more than 16 test tanks. I actually did try and count previously on a recent episode, but um, yeah, it gets confusing if you start considering certain vehicles as test tanks as well too. So, but yeah, so this is uh, a cryo test that they performed. I guess this is probably at the end of it when they're detanking. It looks like.
This was actually the flyover was between a couple of tests. It was actually it was kind of confusing on what they were really actually doing with this article because both time it frosted over twice. However, both times it didn't seem like it was frosted over from a liquid fill level. It was almost like a pressure where we see that condensation when they depressurize.
Right.
So when I was watching it, I never saw like a liquid level like rise from bottom to top. So it almost feels like they only did some kind of partial cryo testing. I'm not even entirely sure what they were doing other than maybe some conditioning work. The fact that they've already removed it from there and brought it back to the build site is also kind of interesting.
Yeah. So, I mean, we were expecting them to put the cap on top of this thing and do some structural testing, but it did move back this morning, and it's currently inside of the Star Factory. So that's kind of rare. I guess it's probably the first time something's ever. I'll take that back. But yeah, I would say it's rare for something to come back from from testing and then go back into the Star Factory or the fabrication tents in the past. So with it being in the Star Factory currently, I think that's probably a sign that we're initially just doing a pressure test to make sure everything's good, and then there's probably some additional um, components that they still plan to add on here before they bring it back out for the next test.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like with all the added stringers that they put on it too, that there's probably some compressive stuff they want to do with the hat, and I'm wondering if the actual cage isn't quite ready for those types of tests, and they just needed to remove it so they could go back into fabricating the rest of the systems.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I've been expecting, given that this is supposed to get taller, is that there's actually a second component for this, which would be the booster forward section. So I'm thinking that there may be a second test article that's made to be used with this one, and that's probably why they sent it back. Um, so I think if that's the case, we'll probably see that other test article roll out relatively soon, depending on where they are with it, of course.
Yeah,
And one thing I did want to correct really quick from last week was the mounting positions for the rods that are back here. Okay, we can't see them because of the vapors. But initially, I guess we thought they were up here, um, but they're actually down below down here. So you can, with this low angle, you can see them down there.
well, and the one that you're pointing at right there is actually one of those five that would meet up with the legs. I still think that it's the other ones for the rods are just above the walkway, but it's a little bit farther in on the next one over. I'm not sure if there is one that's somehow buried underneath those five bigger ones. I think that you have to have one on all those as well to make the full 20. But I think what we're seeing is that there's some form of move. I don't know what I'm seeing now that we're looking at the handrails there, but that cradle was pretty obvious. Yeah, I guess you're right. I don't think I've seen look closely at this one to realize that that is actually down below the walkway.
Yeah, there's two different things going on here. I think there's a mounting point for like some sort of piston or something right here, but then there's also another one behind it, which is the same as these.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah, a bit confusing with this walkway on it. Kind of difficult to see all this stuff, but let's see. What else? Anything else at Massey's that we should touch on?
I don't really think there's a whole lot else that's moved. I mean, I think we'll see some more things here in the next week or two, where because that next level of the stand has been started but hasn't really moved on progress in the last 2 weeks.
Cool. Well, let me check into live comms and really quick and see if we had any questions. Okay, so we have one question from Brian Illenberg. Do you guys think that the lack of S30 tile loss was because of the trench or the tiles? What do you think, BJ?
Yeah, I think it's probably mostly about the trench. I mean, I think we've seen over the last couple static fires even that the tiles have held up better. I mean, there might be some plausibility to the tiles themselves. However, even like the last couple tests at the suborbital pad, they didn't have these newest upgraded tiles, so it's hard to tell whether the newest tile is that much better. I think the newer tile is going to be more about being able to handle the heat of reentry than it is about taking those vibratory forces that we see during static fires.
Yeah, I would say that it's probably a combination of both. Like, obviously, the not having as much reflection back on the vehicle is definitely a plus. But also just their tile attachment in general has been improving over time. And so I think that as they're putting these on, they're also doing probably the suction test to make sure that they're staying on. So it's just overall general process. I'd say that's um, creating that improvement.
Yeah, that suction test is definitely, I think, proven to be a key to them to be able to tell if with the way, like even on a tile or a tile that's put on with the pins and such, that you can't really see how that attachment's in there. So you need that test to be able to confirm that it actually is sitting the way it needs to. And obviously, the adhesive changes over different iterations. Um, they need that to be able to verify instead of just going, well, we know this glue should work, but is there something about the application that didn't go quite right?
Right. So second question from Missing Tools. Where is the Riverbank signboard located, upstream or downstream, and how far away from Massey's? I am not sure what they're talking about. Do you know what that's
Yeah,
referring to?
I do. There's a signboard. There's actually, if I'm not mistaken, there's actually a signboard to both directions along the river. I'd have to go back and look. I don't even know if I'm aware of exactly where they are. Um, I think one of them is here. Yeah, if towards that top left corner, Zach, of where the
Oh, in that image I was just looking at?
it wasn't in that image. It's in that area by the shopping center. One of the signs is in that cleared lot right on the river. Um, so I don't know if this one. Well, actually, maybe it's not. There's a different one. Try three to the right there. I think might be the one that has. It's the one with the skate ramp. Yeah, there it is. I think this is whatever skate park or whatever this is, bike park. But that is one of the signboards that warns river traffic of closures before static fires and any testing at Massey's.
Interesting. Yeah, that would suck to like not catch that when you're driving by.
Yeah, a lot of the photographers have been out going around with Anthony on the river there and have taken pictures of those boards. And I know that there was warnings for even before the testing of test tank 16, warning of upcoming tests.
Cool. So I'm going to go to the next question. Let's see. This one is related to Booster 12. I think I might save that. Um, George M asks, what would be the reason for them to keep the old nose cone prison, nose cone jail? So we kind of touched on that last week, and I think that the fact that it's still here is just a sign that they're going to eventually test more nose cones. So I guess theoretically you could also do the same thing in here, but I don't know. I think maybe these structures just have two different purposes. You don't really need to do like cryo testing with nose cone tests. So um, I think that they'll probably still keep this structure, and they do have, which I'm kind of surprised that we haven't seen a test article for it yet. But with the changes to um, the V2 Starship, the specifically the nose cone area, I'm kind of surprised we haven't seen a test tank, and I think possibly eventually we will. Um, I mean, I guess the biggest changes that I would expect them to want to retest are the mounts for the forward flaps. Um, I think everything else is relatively the same, except for the fact that it's shorter than it was on the version one ship. So, um, yeah, I would still expect to see some sort of test article for that.
Yeah, that's definitely likely, and I think the that space within the uprights of the two test structures is so much different. I think it would be difficult to do nose cone testing in the other one without having to create some form of additional structures to be able to get into where that nose cone is, because we remember that the new one is wide enough for the cap to actually go all the way inside, not just a vehicle like it is in the old nose cone jail.
And really quick, I did want to touch on a few donations that we got from in the chat. So, Methane Man gifted 5 RGV memberships. Thank you for that. We also have JK Video with a $10 donation, and another $10 donation for from Sharpie, who says "Choo choo, all aboard." So, thank you all for the donations, and sorry if we've potentially missed any that came earlier. Um, well, okay, I did see that Sharpie gifted a membership as well too. Um, and I think we just had another one, Jonathan McD. Okay, I thought that was a gift membership, but he's been a member for 9 months and is pointing that out for us. And last but not least, I see Yazada with a $10 donation as well, boarding Sharpie's train. So thank you all for the donations. We really appreciate it. Um, Definitely helps to keep up in the air every week. And, you know, hopefully y'all can tell that Mauricio is trying really hard when it comes to making sure that we do have images every week. This was not the greatest week for flying given the rainstorms, but he managed to get up there and still do a low level um, low level flyover, which is um, allowing us to still be able to talk about the changes for this week. So shout out to Mauricio for getting out there to do that, and all of you for your donations that are helping him continue to do so. So with that, I think we will move over to the Sanchez site.
Yeah, and I think I saw
And
also in the chat, Zach, a thank you out there too to Big Luscious is also welcome to becoming a RGV flight supporter.
Big
So,
Luscious, that's an awesome name.
yep. Yeah, I was just scrolling through the chat and saw that one was back there too. So welcome to becoming a member.
Are you sure it's Luscious and not Lucius?
I don't know. It looks like Luscious if I'm pronouncing it right.
I think they'll respond in the chat soon and we'll find out. Cool. So moving over to Sanchez. I'm going to be honest with y'all. I'm not sure if there's too many changes to really discuss over here at Sanchez, although they we have had the 4th tower section stacked over the past week, and the 5th module moved as well. So that one is currently sitting at the pad B area. This one right here is
That is
is
five.
5,
That's
right? Yeah.
that's 5 before it moved. Yep, it moved later that day.
Yeah, so 5 is already there, waiting to get lifted, and we still have 6 is the one it seems like we're waiting on before that next um, extension of the crane. So once it reconfigures so that it can do the last 3 sections, is this is a big milestone, I would say. And it was supposed to be finished. I guess by today, right? Section 6 is
Yeah,
what
I
they were
mean,
expecting.
yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's hard to tell what the actual schedule of the actual lifts was. I mean, today was, in fact, the day that the FAA documents permitted them to reconfigure the crane to the additional height that they need to fully stack the tower. So, obviously, with the weather, we've seen a little bit of delay. Perhaps Module 6 was still not quite in the schedule yet. It might be a day or two from when they scheduled it, but it's obviously still a little bit behind because of the weather.
Really quick, we did get some confirmation that it is in fact Luscious and not Lucius. So,
Okay, there we go.
um, yeah. So you were saying that the date, which is today, doesn't necessarily mean that that's when they were actually intending to have the sixth module stacked. It's just kind of like a placeholder that allows them to extend the crane once they need to.
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to because of the height of that crane that you have to have FAA permission to raise it to a certain height. So it's one of those where they can't take it to that next level any sooner than today. But if they were to have been fully stacked now and they put in the permit for 2 weeks from now, for example, they would either have to probably reapply for that permit to allow them to do it in the next week, or wait till the permit becomes activated essentially to have that hazard at the height above what's already been permitted per the date.
Right, that makes sense. One thing I was just thinking about when I was looking at this image right here, and I'm probably gonna grab another one. Um, it's just funny to see how small these chopsticks look from this angle, and even funnier to me is that a lot of people would rather SpaceX wait until the new tower is finished to perform the first catch attempt. But I think to me this is like level 2 for sure. Like I would definitely want to try and catch it on the longer ones before I move to these shorter ones. It looks
Yeah, I totally agree. I feel like the when they start catching on this particular tower set of chopsticks, they're going to have to be so precise because the vehicle is going to be really close to the hinge point, I would imagine. I mean, the margins are just so much tighter. The bigger chopsticks are going to give them, I think, a better option. Yeah, they don't move as quickly, but having that extra rail for the first attempt or two, I think, is going to be really important.
yeah, they look really funny though. I'm excited to see them once they are on the tower. I'd say we have a ways to go before that though, probably at least a month, um, if not a little longer.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think it's going to take a bit of time. I think there's still some systems to put on there. I would imagine they're going to try and do before they actually lift it in place. And until that last configuration of the crane's done, obviously that lift probably won't happen before then, anyways.
Right. Let's
But
see. Anything? Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, just the other comment about the shorter ones. I mean, obviously we've seen the shorter chopsticks on the tower at 39A, but just the fact that we don't have that proximity to get close up pictures, I think agree to your previous comment that it's really going to be interesting to see how short they look on a tower that you can get really close to.
Yeah, agreed. Because we haven't really seen too many close-up images of that tower. A few from the bus tours, but most of the time it's from an angle where the chopsticks are not visible. Um, so yeah, this is going to be interesting to say the least. Let's see. Anything else at Sanchez that you may have noticed?
Yeah, there wasn't a whole lot of new stuff. I mean, some things moved around there. I mean, in this picture, you can see that they've prepped those last two engine work platforms with their leg uprights and put all three of them together there in the middle. Obviously, we saw a lot of those components last week already, so it's not really all that new, and we've seen the previous sets as well. But yeah, not a lot going on. They did move the actuators from over by the chopsticks over by where Tower Module 5 is right now. Seems like there's still must be some work, and it's unclear what those are going to be for. I would assume they're probably for the next set of chopsticks there, but there's really not been a lot of movement. I think the rain and everything else really prevented them from doing a lot of outside work here.
Yeah, it's interesting seeing from this angle because you can kind of get a better idea of how large some of the items are down here. I'm kind of keeping an eye on these boxes, trying to figure out what's inside of them. Um, but yeah, we got all the feet sections for the towers, the pedestals sitting down here in a pile. Um, what else do we have down here that's kind of new? Not really much.
Yeah, not there's really it's been a slow move down here. I mean, if you stop there, we there has been some work down there. We can't see what they're doing, but they've added that green tarp over where the crown block is for segment 9. Not sure if they're actually work if they've snuck some crown blocks in there or if they're just preparing for the installation whenever they get here.
And I did see a related question about the chopsticks from Lewis Nags. Is there any other difference to the chopsticks apart from it being shorter? Um, no, that is the main difference. I mean, obviously, by shortening it, you reduce the amount of mounting points for the gas springs and the actuator. Um, and on the let's see, where's the carriage over here? On the carriage, there's only um, one set of accumulators on here, whereas on the other set there are two, and this is primarily just to do with the fact that you don't need um, the same kind of like hydraulic force to move these smaller arms. So you're able to do the same thing with one accumulator than that you were doing with two on the other. Cool. And I do see a ton of donations in here as well too. So I will touch on those before we move over to the build site area. So we have uh, 5 gifted memberships from Toby Woby. Uh, we have another 5 gifted memberships from uh, I don't know how to say this name properly. I want to say Chap Kuipers, and I probably destroyed that, so I'm sorry. We have a $5 donation from Pete 2.0, and then another 5 gifted memberships from Big Luscious. So again, thank you all for your support. Oh, and I almost forgot one at the bottom right there. We have another $10 donation from Callistia Lee. So hopping on the train, got to keep RGV flying. Definitely appreciate your support, and thank you to everybody. And if y'all haven't already, do us a favor and hit that like button. Um, we always appreciate your guys' support. I was just looking over to see how many we had right now. I usually don't really look, but it's always interesting to see. Um, yeah, continuing on. I guess one more detail that we can point out from over here is that at least one level of the parking garage appears to have opened up. Well, maybe this is 2 because I don't see anything on the bottom level yet. But at least one level of this parking garage is opened up. So you wouldn't be able to tell by looking around outside because there's still massive amounts of cars out here. But
Yeah, the amount of double parking there on the outside still is kind of humorous that they've got some parking and it definitely hasn't alleviated anything yet.
yeah, you got I think this is almost looking like reverse only parking that they've asked for over here. Um, it may just be that the people are used to doing that. In my industry, in the oil field, we only allow reverse only parking. So that's kind of what it looks like to me here. But then you have parallel parking and then another reverse only parking. That, in my opinion, should probably be required for sure, for sure. Um, just to
Yeah,
reduce the possibility of accidents.
yeah, you don't want to be backing out in a highway 4 because you're parked in by that row on the inside in the middle.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so moving on, I'm going to take us over to the build site, which is um, very, very difficult for us to see this week. Matter of fact, I don't know if there's actually anything that we can see, but there are other things that we can talk about. Um, I guess one thing over here, most of the framework that's been going into the um, uh, Mega Bay 2 seems to have been already installed, so there's not much left. I think there's a few stairway. The top is some stairway platforms up here. But other than that, it seems like they're mostly done with that interior work. Um,
Yeah, it seems like most for the most part they've gotten they were pouring some concrete on some of those upper decks again the other day, and could see that they were putting some handrails in. So, wonder if they are really getting all the way to that left side and having all those done, and it's just a matter of outfitting some stairs and some handrails and things like that to really get that finished off.
right. Um, so one thing I did want to talk about, and I'm just double checking through here to make sure that I uh, I'm not missing anything. But we did have some action in Mega Bay 2 this week with okay, I think ship 33. So the other day, ship 33's nose cone section moved into the front right corner in here, and I'm actually going to back this up because I think you can actually almost see it. Um, yeah, you can see it looks like there's scaffolding around the this is the turntable in here.
Yeah, yeah, that's in the back corner. Yeah.
Is it the back corner or the front?
Turntables in the back corner, I think those are similar to how we've seen those structures around the turntables in Mega Bay 1. I think they've created the same structure around the turntable in the back, right? But yeah, the 33 nose cone payload bay looked like it was integrated with the Pez dispenser in the front right, though, down at ground level.
Yeah, and so the if you guys haven't heard this already, the nose cone for ship 33 is actually I believe 2 rings shorter.
The nose cone, I think, is the same, but the payload section that's attached to it is only 3 instead of 5 rings. It's shorter. It seems like the payload is actually kind of raising up into the nose cone a little bit more to create room for the other changes with the V2 ships.
Yeah, and I know Chameleon Circuit from the Ring Watchers is working on some pretty cool renders to explain how that looks. So I won't go too deep into it, but I think another difference here, and I could be wrong, is that the no, sorry, the forward dome actually goes further up into the payload section as well too, so that further shortens it. And so I think that's what three rings extra of tank space now.
Yeah, I think that's what we're expecting. The two rings that came off of the payload bay section, and then the assumed additional ring that was a change from V1 to V2. So, in theory, those 3 rings should be tankage at some point.
Yeah. So with this one, they did some interesting things last night. So I think, and this is something I find interesting and weird at the same time. So I'm not 100% sure whether or not the reason they were lifting it with the crane out here is just because they needed to get underneath it. But it's kind of looking like, which also makes sense, that they're going to have to use one of these mobile cranes to lift the tank section onto the uh, actual turntable. So I mean, first you have the um, 2 point lifter to sorry 4 point lifter to lift the nose cone off of the turntable, and then you have to put this down first and then lower the nose cone back on it. And it just makes me wonder about the layout decision for the actual mega bay. So I mean, with having that turntable in the back right corner, you can only access it with one bridge crane. So you can bring the bridge crane over, lift the ship or the nose cone off it, and then you need a mobile crane to lift this on top. Um, and it's interesting to me that they went down that road because um, ideally, if you had that um, rotary table in the center right here, then you could just use one bridge crane to lift the nose cone off, and then use the second bridge crane to um, move your new section on top of the turntable. But I don't know. I guess one reason not to do that is because this camera sitting right here, and they maybe want it out of the way in the corner. and have things that they don't mind everybody seeing in plain view. So yeah, but this was an interesting thing last night because it took them forever to get it back onto the transport stand. They were like really struggling with that. And then I think
Yeah, it's weird, I don't even think that. I wonder if they were even ever trying to get it onto the stand. I mean, last night's activities with this thing was really weird, but I think eventually they're going to get back to doing the double lifts. But I agree, they're right now. I think going through some of the growing pains of how they're going to work in that bay, the fact that they can't get an article onto the turntable with the bridge crane while they've got the 4-point lifter on a nose cone, I think that's going to go away similar to how we had it before. It's just something right now that's not functional.
oh, you're right. Okay, so I thought the double lifts were only with the booster.
No, they when they stacked, well, I guess 31, I think 31, 30, no, 32 was stacked with a 2-point lifter, I believe, or maybe one of them. I know they stacked top to bottom and did the tandem lifts. I think it's just right now, it's just a circumstance. Maybe even that the 4-point lifter being the first time they've used it, maybe even they want to do a little different process as opposed to doing those double lifts with the new lifter.
Right.
But
And
yeah,
for those who don't know what we're talking about, the double lift, so basically you would bring this thing on the stand that it's currently sitting on, roll it into the middle of the bay here, and then you use the 2-point lifter to lift the nose cone off of the turntable and then lower it onto the tank section and then attach those two together. Not weld them together, just attach them using some sort of load spreader. I don't really know what it looks like, but then lift both of those up together at the same time and then put them back onto the turntable. So they really started doing that, I think, first in Mega Bay 1 with the boosters, but I guess I missed them doing that with the ship as well too. But that makes sense. I was like, I feel like I'm missing something here. Like, why are they using these mobile cranes to get it in there? So
yeah, I
yeah,
think they getting it. I think the mobile crane on this one, whatever it was that they were doing with the lifts inside of that article, because it was really weird watching them lift that stand on one end to drive the two scissor lifts within the ring stand, and then they worked on it and they left it floating. If they would have set it down and did some work for a while, but it's like they left it hanging a couple inches off the stand for hours while they were doing something inside.
yeah. Um, So has this moved into the? It looks like it was moving in
Yes.
right here.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was moved in this morning. Yes, I think that sat here. It wasn't until daylight that they actually put it up into the turntable, if I recall seeing it correctly this morning.
One thing I did want to point out here, just waiting for it to turn around. So this does have some new vents on the front of it. So there are two parallel vents, um, which is new on these. I think they only ever had one on each side, right? And this has two pairs of parallel vents. So I think this is one of those things that Elon mentioned during his tour with the Everyday Astronaut.
Yeah, I'm not as quite as familiar with where the vents were, but that sounds about right. This article definitely had a few interesting things to kind of look at with some of the changes that the V2 ships with the tiles over the stringers and also some of those changes to that E-dome with the extra supports we've seen on some other test articles.
Right, right. Cool. So I'm going to go back to the aerials. Um, and as I mentioned, there's not really a ton to cover over at the build site, just given the altitude of the flyover. So I'm going to move us over to the Star Factory. Actually, hold on. I did see a question that I should probably address. Okay. So John T asks, will the tile bakery tent get replaced or removed? So this is the tile bakery tent down here. And I mean, this was something that I was expecting them to move into the Star Factory. I mean, they do have a lot of new stuff in here, which obviously we haven't seen yet. So they have a press pit and a bunch of different fabrication stations inside of here for um, constructing some of the items that they were previously outsourcing. Um, so I have a feeling, because we haven't seen one in a while, that they're potentially pressing booster um, thrust pucks in here, and potentially producing their own ship thrust pucks as well too. So those are no longer being delivered to Star Factory. At least I haven't seen an image of one being delivered in a long time. So um, yeah, as far as this goes, I was, like I said, kind of expecting it to move into the building, but it seems to be still here for now. There's a chance that, because this is already an up and running facility right here, that it's like a low priority for them, and so they're kind of focusing on all the other manufacturing stations first, and then possibly move this in there later. Um, so I guess we'll have to keep our eyes out on that. And in all reality, Star Factory is still expanding, so there may not be space in there for it now, but there could be later. So we have no idea what's going to go into really any of these areas. Um, and yeah, so there's always a possibility of expanding that production over here. Although I highly doubt that they would end up putting something like that in this area, because they seem to, in my opinion, want the ability to look out into the factory from all was it 4 levels, um, 5 levels? Yeah.
5 levels,
So
yeah.
yeah, I guess it's 6 if you count the roof, right?
Yeah, but yeah, that tent, I think it's destined to be replaced at some point. It's just it seems like they're still sticking around for a little bit yet,
Right.
with them recoating the top and not too long ago. And but yeah, with everything else being upgraded to hard buildings, there's no reason to think that that is a long term solution.
Right. I wonder if this rainstorm was like the first true test for. Well, I guess they got a lot of rain during the hurricane, but it seems like the rainstorm this week was uh, a lot larger than when the hurricane came through. So yeah, I mean, obviously it looks like it held up pretty well, but there's a ton of drainage that all I think comes out right here from the roof of this building, and I mean, man, that thing got dirty super quick.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting that even with as much rain as we've gotten, that the rain doesn't even do any type of job of actually washing away a lot of the dust and dirt that has collected since they put those roofs up.
Oh, definitely not. Yeah, I when I lived in Chicago, I could always tell how old buildings were by the color of the roof, like when I was looking down on them. And yeah, it gets crazy how dirty these things get. Eventually, I think you do end up either having to like clean it or fully resurface it. Um, but obviously, I think cleaning would come first in this situation. Um, but moving over to the only other area of the Star Factory where we're actually able to see any progress happening, um, they have continued to build out the interior office space over here. So you can see a lot of that internal framework going on. They got even some mechanical work being installed in here as well too. And they're really only working. Actually, I think they're kind of working on this bottom floor too, but it mostly looks like these 2 floors where they're really really getting going on that framework.
Yeah, it seems with the ability to work in some relatively dry environments is actually allowing them to make some progress there. Everywhere else with the weather has held up, and they can at least work in there
Right.
on a few things, other outside of all the footings that are flooded out and having to kind of wait on, like everything everywhere else.
And I don't know if we touched on this last week, but we did finally confirm that they the locations of the staircase and the elevators. So they actually, I'm not seeing them here, but in a um, shot from Carlos Nunez, I think they had started installing the stairs. It must have been after this was taken. And then we also have the elevator core, I think, right here, which doesn't go to the roof. The stairs do go to the roof.
Yeah, the
Well,
stairs over there, they've got the first three floors. The stairs were in there. It's just kind of hard to see from this particular angle. That last couple levels is still under construction.
right. Yeah, and from this angle, it's really cool. You can you can see the size of the foundations that they're putting down here for the columns. They're a lot larger than they look when you view them from directly above. But most of this area is really washed out, and I think that they weren't able to get as much done over this past week that they probably would have liked to. And one thing that I'm not sure if we can see actually is if they've still haven't touched this area yet.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen some of the headers in the legal fight and all that stuff. That case is still active, according to the records from the county. So I don't think we're not totally wrapped up. I think they may have found a resolution. It just may be a little bit longer before all the ink is dry on all the paperwork to where they can actually start doing what they need to do with that lot.
Yeah, they. So last week I did show that uh, I don't even know. We didn't even have like a document name or anything like that on it, but it said that it was resolved, and I was like, okay, it's just really difficult to tell like what case is actually from. So,
Yeah, I mean, they haven't actually put any full reports out. I mean, it's just essentially a case event that we kind of referenced on a few things. It said that the mediation was settled. I think because of some of the other things, there's some motions for summary judgment that were also entered that same day. I think those things actually have to come before the court and the judge to actually like finalize them and then go through all of the formalities.
right. So I see a question here from Tony. Tony Ugg. Wasn't there a picture of a booster bottom interior with header tank with extra tanks attached? Any comments? Yeah, so I suppose that was this week. I'll open that up on X. I'm going to have to move this over really quick because I can't just open a random X window right now without some crazy stuff being first on the screen lately. So I'm going to do this off screen. I don't want to get canceled because of something that pops up on here. So I think I posted it on my own profile. Yes, I did. Okay. Yeah, so here we go. Move that back over. Now that it's safe. Yeah, so this is and thanks for reminding me of this, Tony. Not gonna lie, I thought this happened last week. I thought we already talked about this. But yeah, so this is not a V2 booster, but is an upgraded aft section for booster 15. I did talk to Jax about this because I wanted to know like how they know it's not a V2 booster. And his response was, it's not. So
Yeah,
I don't know
I
why.
tend to agree. It obviously there's some iteration updates and things like that, but yeah, what we've seen from the other pieces of Booster 15, I agree, kind of that it's not is accurate.
Yeah, I was like, so how do you know this is not a V2 booster? And he's just like, yeah, it's not. I'm like, okay, well, that's good enough for me, I guess. But yeah, so we do have some interesting changes here with what looks like two groups of 3 tanks. So it kind of only looks like there's 2 from the side, but from other angles, you're able to see it a little bit better. And there's also 3 groups of pipes up here, which kind of helps point that out. So these are pretty interesting. They are not COPVs. They're regular stainless steel tanks, similar to the CO2 tanks that are on the other side of the booster. There's, I think, a few different thoughts about like what this could be related to. So, one idea would be for basically using these as COPVs or the equivalent of COPVs for replacing autogenous pressurization for the landing tank. And I say replacing, but we don't even know if they use autogenous pressurization for the landing tank already or not. It's kind of believed that they use the COPVs some of the COPVs to pressurize the landing tank, which in my opinion makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's such a small, I say small, but it's really huge, but relative to the rest of the tank, it's fairly small. So, and you're pulling fluid out of it at a fairly high rate during that landing burn. And so I think, um, you know, using COPVs to pressurize it makes more sense because you're immediately delivering the pressure that you need before the engines even finish starting up. So instead of having to wait for that autogenous pressurization system to do its thing, you're already immediately delivering that pressure. But as far as these being related to that, I think it's difficult to say that because we're not really seeing the whole picture here. So for one, we don't know how far down these things go, and we don't know what's on the bottom of them. And as far as what we can see on the top, there's no valves on these pipes. Obviously, there could be some inside of the tank, although um, that probably wouldn't make very much sense to me. I think you would probably want them accessible from the outside. So without valves, these don't look like an actual pressurization system, and instead, it kind of looks like these pipes are made so it can each of these tanks can equalize pressure with the landing tank. And so there were some thoughts that there are additional pipes on the bottom of these going into the tank, which would increase the actual um, total volume of the tank. So if that was the case, it would be like a band-aid fix for increasing the capacity of the landing tank. And I don't know. I have a few thoughts on that theory. It just doesn't make sense to me because, in my opinion, um, you could easily, in the time that it took to produce this booster 15 aft section, they could have easily increased the size of this landing tank. Um, I mean, they could have just before they even assembled it added another section in the middle. It's possible that would require a structural verification test. But again, it's been close to a year since they've known that they do need extra capacity, if that is the case. And so I think there's plenty of time to do it the right way instead of a I don't know, a band-aid like this, I guess. Um, and so I think that this is something completely different. Do you have any thoughts on it, BJ?
I don't have any new comments. I mean, I think, and my first impression was that I thought it had something to do with pressurizing the tank as well. It kind of aligned with most people's opinions at first, and then I'm coming around. I think it's likely more of a capacity expansion right now, but I don't really have any original ideas regarding that. But it does definitely seem like it's one of those like retrofit band-aids just to get through um, these next few, and then at some point we'll see something that's a little bit more um, a total package fix.
Right. Yeah. And I guess if we continue to see these on future boosters, V2 boosters specifically, then we'll know that it has had nothing to do with whatever we thought it was.
Yeah.
But the good news is, with things like this, we will see it again because they have to roll it by the camera in order to get it to the Mega Bay, and I greatly appreciate that. Um, I do wish that we could see. They never leave it outside long enough for a flyover to happen, so you can actually see into the tank. But
Yeah. Yeah, they're only going to ever give us just those plain rings, kind of like the tank section that's been sitting in front of Mega Bay for a couple weeks now. All these important pieces, they're just going to hurry them across and keep them covered.
I'm just hoping they have to scrap one day, and then we'll maybe get a look at it. But that's if they don't build an internal scrapyard in the Star Factory.
And
um,
of course, if they scrap it, that means that it's obsolete, and the next version will be different again for us. So
it's true, but it's
it'll give
good.
us some retro. It'll give us some retrospective thought.
Yeah, yeah. Understanding the past can help you figure out the future. That's for sure. So we do have a few other questions on here. Um, For one, we do have a donation from 55 Chevy Guy for $10 joining the train. Thanks, RGV. And 55 Chevy Guy also donated 5 memberships as well too. So thank you for that. Let's see. And Jumping Jacks gifted 1 membership as well. So the questions that were here, what is the dig to the right of the TPS tent behind the Star Factory next to Mega Bay 2? And that was from Cumulus Granitus. Man, I do not envy Astro Joe, because I am only now realizing how hard some of these names are to produce. To say. Let's see. I feel like I'm following a map here. So the right of the TPS tent behind the Star Factory next to Mega Bay 2.
Yeah, I don't think there's so much of a dig as they're just finishing off the grading work around the factory in that particular location.
Yeah, I'm not sure what they're referring to. Yeah, I'm not seeing it. And I don't have another image to like look down on it more. Man, it is
Yeah.
crazy how clear these shots are. But yeah, I'm not really seeing it. Um, yeah, sorry about that. Next question from Mahmoud Ahmad. Do we have any major evidence that Star Factory will be connected directly to the office building? I feel like we do.
Yeah, I guess it depends on the definite what people's definition of directly is. I mean, I'm still not quite sure that they're going to be 100% physically attached. That there might be some form of a 1 or 2 4-foot gap between them, but I
That
could
would be
see them.
silly.
I could also see them connecting. Obviously, there's certain parts of the building, particularly there along the terraced edge of the factory, that it may touch at the bottom, but it's obviously not going to be connected at higher levels. So it's going to be darn close if it's not actually clad all the way up to the office.
Yeah, I mean, we see the um, embeds right here. I think this is as close as they get, right? But
Well, yeah, and
no, there's
even
some
in
that
the
are a little closer, right?
yeah, there's actually one. It's just hidden behind the factory here, but there's one footing I think that is and one embed that is actually in the slab at that corner right there.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to be the closest spot that connects. Whether it connects along that angle or kind of squares off, and then leaves kind of a little bit of a wedge in there. It's hard to tell. I don't think I've seen anything actually in the footer there.
Is there one right here?
I'm not sure. I don't think I've seen one there, but not to say that it's not.
Maybe that's just a puddle. Yeah, and the ones over here, it's a little bit difficult to see. This one right here is fairly close as well too.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah,
there's one right there. The essentially the 2 side by side holes that we saw, I think 2 weeks ago. You can see the one embed there just to the left of your cursor, and again, that's probably 5 or 10 feet to the building.
yeah. I mean, I guess you could have a walkway between the buildings, but um, I don't know. I would say it seems pretty. I'm confident that it's going to be connected, but I guess as far as what's on the other structure, like if there are any clues on here to show how they would be joined together, maybe not.
Yeah, I mean, on there you can see at the second floor, well, it'd be the third floor deck. There, you can actually see that it looks like they've put some framework, some studs along the front surface of the as if that's going to be a solid paneling on the outside there, maybe with glass below it or something.
Right. Which is expected though, right? So I mean, we were kind of expecting glass facing inwards towards the factory,
Yeah.
which would make sense because the factory is loud. So it even though you do want to be able to see in there, you don't necessarily want to hear the inside of the factory when you're working in your office all day long. Um, so I think that makes sense to have glass panels on this side. Cool. So another next question, also from Cumulus Granitus. and I'm really sorry if I'm saying that wrong. Would the values to release the gas contained into this header tank be inside the valves? Sorry, would the valves to release the gas contained in this header be inside of the tank, as nothing is visible up top? Yeah, so I did mention that as a possibility. As far as accessibility goes, I don't know if that's necessarily the greatest place to put them, because you got to climb through 2 tanks just to get to them. But yeah, it is possible that they're inside. Um, I don't know. I, the question at that point would be how you fill them, how you pressurize them, and I guess you're just having pre-existing pressure within this tank and then filling it from the bottom, and the pressure would kind of bleed into these tanks from up top. But I don't know. I just don't think that's what's happening here. Cool. And I guess we will move on. There's one more donation from Scat for 10 euros. Late ticket for the rabbit hole train. Choo choo. Thank you for your donation. Unless we have any other stuff to mention here. Oh, sorry, there is one more question that just popped through. Why use chilled water HVAC for office when everything else uses condenser based cooling? Well, I think and so for those who are wondering what we're talking about here, this is basically that system that he's talking about. This is expected to be a chilled water HVAC system, so it cools the water inside of here and then sends it to the building for the HVAC system. I'm kind of thinking it has something to do with the fact that this roof space is going to be used for something, and it's not necessarily they don't want to put a bunch of HVAC units on top of the roof because they want it to remain open and accessible.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think with the multi-level, there's probably being able to using that type of system probably makes more sense. Whereas like the Star Factory being an open space, you can just put all those units on top, and you don't have nearly as much infrastructure. I don't know HVAC systems that well to know, but I would feel like in generally being able to distribute to those spaces would be more efficient this way.
Yeah, agreed. Cool. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to the launch site. And as I said, we are moving through this show a little bit faster today. Honestly, not quite as fast as I expected that we were going to, but that's fine. So yeah, here we are at the launch site. And once again, with these shots being at low altitude, there are some details that are difficult for us to make out, but we can see a pretty good amount of detail at least. So BJ, where do you want to start?
I don't know. We could probably start over at the tower like we sometimes do. I think that's the closest thing.
Oh, this one?
Yeah. Of course, the
Yeah.
tower 2. Yeah, I guess.
So we gotta.
I guess now that there's 2
more
towers, you got to be more specific.
Yeah. Well, I did want to show before we, I guess, talk about anything important. This crane down here is inside of in the water. It looks like it's like almost partially submerged down here.
Yeah, the trench pond, as I guess one could call it right now. It was being surrounded, almost completely surrounded by a moat.
Yeah, it almost looks like a retention pond in its current state. And the funny thing is, you almost can't tell the difference between this one. So this is the retention pond for the pad A, and it's completely filled. So you would kind of expect that they would be able to just drain this, but we've never seen them do that yet. They typically bring in water trucks and suck all this stuff out. I guess they consider it to be like contaminated, so they don't want to just put it into the wetlands. But yeah, that thing is maxed out. It looks like it overflowed into the second one as well too. But moving back down here, I guess the biggest detail that we're able to see today, which we weren't last week, is the sheet pilings that are going in the ground back here. So I guess BJ, did you want to share your thoughts on all of this first?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we last week we saw kind of the beginning structures of where they were going to start putting the sheet piles in the flyover, and they've been trying to make some progress on actually getting those installed across. And I think it's going to be a little bit more. I mean, obviously, that we've got a straight line here showing that they're going to be excavating pretty fair decently to a decent depth, I guess, with the new flame trench. Um, we'll have to wait, like I said, a little longer to see what direction we're going to go. I mean, this first straight line has, I think, been pretty obvious to all of us for quite a while now, based on how the piles have been drilled, as well as kind of the excavation that has happened before that, which has led to the pond. So I think the theories on how many exits the trench might have and whatnot, I think is still very much speculative amongst everybody, and what their opinions are. But it's coming along, and hopefully we can get the water out of here and they can start making some better progress, because this water's got to be holding them up.
Yeah, for sure. Um, I mean, luckily there's still a lot of progress on the tower while they have all this water down there. I'm sure it's gotten better over the last like day or two. Um, but there's probably pumps going 24/7 there. I bet if I searched for one, I could find it, but I'm not gonna take the time to do that right now. But yeah, it's interesting the way this wall's set up, and I think uh, we haven't seen we haven't seen them start lining out where the remaining walls are going to go. Um, and from here, we can at least see it stops right in this area. Um, and so there is a possibility still that it can go multiple directions. I'm got my fingers crossed that that's what's going to happen, because I think the more the better. It's just such a massive volume of gas that they have to redirect, and I think multiple directions is more ideal. Although then you get to the question of what kind of flame diverter you use in that situation, because without something to actually divert it, you are still essentially firing onto a flat surface, which I don't know. I mean, if they use the deluge system, I don't get how that would work inside of a trench. I guess it would be similar to what they have at 39A and 39B, but that one does have a ramp, um, which is pretty much what that water is falling down onto, is the ramp, and not onto the flat surface below. So, yeah, there's a lot of interesting things that we're going to see, I guess, as this progresses, but more questions than answers right now, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, we did see a couple weeks ago where the kind of to the right there, where that secondary drill is at, that we it hasn't actually done anything. I mean, we've kind of seen this kind of triangular shape start getting dug out, other than the middle of it still kind of having a high spot. So it almost makes me wonder if maybe it will be a predominantly one direction, but have a fairly wide mouth to it, would be my only other thought, as opposed to like going two separate directions. But I don't think we've seen enough excavating or pile work in those areas to really give any confirmation of that.
Yeah, agreed. So you were saying this one has not done anything yet?
No, not that I've seen it. I think it went vertical only about 2 or 3 days ago, but I have not seen it do any drilling just yet. I'm kind of curious what kind of work they're going to do there. That drill can do horizontal drilling as well as vertical drilling. So my
Oh, this
first
one is
thought
the
was,
one for the tiebacks.
yeah, and I think maybe that might be what that particular drill is going to be doing at some point, but I don't think they're far enough along on anything to be
Start doing
using
that.
it for it. So
Yeah.
yeah, so even having it vertical right now, unless they're doing some kind of extra vertical piles while the BG45 is over on the other side of the site getting ready to do other pile work, I think we're just gonna have to wait and see, because it hasn't been used yet.
Right. Yeah, and this is the other CFA drilling rig, which I don't know if it's was working in this area again this week or not.
I think it's been sitting where it is right now. I think all week. It hasn't really done anything since moving away from the south side. It was working on the west side of Tower Two, I think, right after the previous flyover, and then it's just kind of, I think it's the soil and wet weather has prevented from doing anything else. I'd imagine it's going to do some more tank work over on this side. It's hard to tell whether it's going to be on which side of the new entrance it'll be, but there's a lot of pile rebar cages everywhere over here. So something's happening soon.
Are these more rebar cages right here?
Yeah, they moved the build site over to there, and it looks like there's a number of them there, just in the
There's more over
behind
here.
it there. Yeah, those ones there have been there for a bit, and they've been constructing more over on this side. So it's almost leading to some suspicion that some additional tank farm might expand on the Tower 2 side of the entrance, perhaps, or maybe they're just using this space because it's available to build, and they'll use that secondary crane to move them over wherever the next set of piles are going to be drilled.
Yeah, I would like to see another extension to the flame trench in this direction. I know some people are mentioning that, you know, blasting things towards the tank farm, but they technically already do that. Um, so I don't think that would be a huge deal. Um, and this launch pad is actually further away from the tanks than this one is, so I think it would probably be fine. And I mean, it'd probably be as simple as just putting up another wall around this. Um, so yeah, we'll have to keep our eyes on that. And we do have still this excavation work going on down here, but unfortunately, we can't really see how far down they've gotten from this angle.
Yeah, it's hard to tell. I feel like from what we could tell from the video, the stream cams, it doesn't seem like they've dug any deeper than it was last week. We did see early in the week a pump truck was here. It looked like they might have put a mud layer down at the bottom of that pit, so it may be as deep as it's going to go at this point. And then I think formwork has started to show up recently as well, to start doing whatever is going to go down in there.
Hmm. Cool. Yeah, I mean, other than that, they have definitely made some progress with the tower. Obviously, this fourth section, as we mentioned earlier, was stacked after this flyover, and then now the fifth section is parked down in this area currently. Um, they've added some of the steel for the, I guess you can call them the wings that come off the side of the tower. They've added those on this side as well. Um, and I think last week they also had this platform partially built, which looks like they're about. They haven't started on this side of it, but they have put the
Yeah,
floor joist in on this side.
yeah, pretty much right up to that opening where your cursor's at is where they've got that floor structure in there. Um, I think most of that steel is here. They just haven't started putting it in. I think earlier this week also we saw I think it's the two beams that are actually the top of that roof that'll span between the legs arrived as well, because they had a bunch of attachments for essentially the roof joists. So they're still getting more pieces to finish that off at some point.
Yeah, and beyond that, they have been very busy with the welding work still. From this angle, it looks like they've finished the at least this side um, of the base structure. So they did have a rail that was installed along here that they were using a automated welding robot to work their way up to the top, and it looks to me like they might be done with that. They still have the scaffolding up on these two, this side and the back side. Um, so I think they're still working on that, but they have for sure moved on to doing the tower legs. And unfortunately, I don't have some ground shots because there would be some great stuff to talk about that with the ground shots. But I think we'll probably be able to save it for next week. But I guess one thing that I did notice as of this morning, which seems to be different from Tower One, I'd have to go back and verify. But the plates that they use to attach the column to the attach the columns together. It looks like what they've done is weld the sides. So there's plates on the front side and the back side, and they weld the other two sides. And this morning we saw them actually cutting off the plate and starting to weld on the third and fourth sides as well too. So that's, I think, different from the first tower. Um, where they only welded on the sides and they kept all the bolts in for on the other two faces. So yeah, like I said, hopefully we'll have some ground images next time because we'll be able to compare the two and verify that. But yeah, as of right now, they are finishing up with the bottom layer, and I believe they may have started on this level as well too. I haven't
Yep.
seen that yet though.
Yep, that's true. They have started some of the welds on the between module 1 and 2. It seems like they're getting really close to wrapping up those second two faces down at the feet, because the two that didn't have bolt plates seem to be pretty much done and ground off quite a few days ago already, actually.
Right. What else do we got over here? I would say that's kind of pretty much it for the pad B area.
Yeah, I would
Um,
agree.
yeah, we can't really see much going on with the tank farm from this distance. Yeah, so it's tough to tell if they made progress in here. We have seen them moving stuff back and forth with crane. Okay, that was my dog.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, from the flyovers, we really can't see a whole lot. There has been some activity in those areas. I know a number of pieces of equipment have been lifted out of the near side on the road, and you can just barely see the excavator behind one of the two newer vertical tanks, and they have started taking apart those pedestals for the box tanks from the backside, as opposed to doing it from within. It seems like they're doing it from the outside.
Wait, say that again.
Up at the old vertical LOX tanks,
Okay.
one of those two back ones, there's an excavator you can see in the back. But I saw yesterday, I think it was from Rover 2, that we could actually see that they were working to take that concrete out finally, after it's been like, what, 3-4 weeks now since those tanks were gone. And they didn't seem to be making progress. I think it has to do with the fact that they needed a bigger excavator for those taller footings, because that little mini excavator probably would have just been covered.
Right. You know, the funny thing about my dog barking just now, like, she doesn't bark ever. But I still usually don't let her in here because she's always like, scratching herself and all kinds of stuff that'll come through on the mic. Today I was like, you know what? She's been good this week. Let me just let her in here. See how that went? Not very well. Anyways, so moving on.
Yeah.
I guess the last major detail we can really talk about would be with the ongoing work on the chopsticks. And again, we don't have ground images, but I do have at least one image that will help us out for discussing this. So as of this week, they have, well, I guess this kind of started last week, technically, but they've been adding in additional gas springs onto the chopstick rails. So initially they had one on each side, and then the actual actuator in the middle. But there are other brackets for additional gas springs. I think there's one right here, 1, 2, 3, and I'm not sure if this one's double sided as well or not. I haven't seen the backside in a while. But they've basically added in all the extra gas springs as of this morning. That we've really seen them. If you're looking at Lab Padres cameras, you can see all of the new gas springs added in here, and they also replaced the originals. So yeah, they're definitely getting ready for that first catch attempt. And this was something I was wondering about, if they were going to do all of that work, because it's been sitting here for so long and without having these additional gas springs added in here. So um, I would say every day it's looking more and more like they're really serious about this, which I personally don't think they've given us any reason to doubt that. But yeah, I mean, it's great to see, and I think by adding these in here, the shorter chopsticks only have mounting spots for, I think, 1 piston and 4 gas springs, whereas this one's 1 piston and 8 gas
Six.
springs.
I think there's 6. I think they're only doubled on both ends, I
Okay,
think.
yeah, so 6. And so I think that helps with just the general increased mass of this rail since it's longer than the other one. Um, and in general, I guess the more dampers you have, the better for when the booster actually falls down on top of this. Um, but that's really going to be kind of crazy, I think, for all of us to see that for the first time.
Yeah, definitely. The work that they've been doing after the tests that they did with 14.1, and just I mean, they have spent a lot of time swapping out all those dampers and the actuators, as well as even some of those linkages. The bars that are in there haven't been replaced. There's definitely a lot of stuff going on there. I feel like those end ones that we've seen mostly taken out. I wonder if it has anything to do with the fact that they added those. Positioning sensors on them, and maybe there's some other system going in there to help them know where the rail is uh, in its travel.
Right. Yeah, and it looks like the gas springs look a little bit different, the new ones as well too. So I wonder if they're like a completely different design. Of course, it'd be nice to show them here, but hopefully we'll be able to next week. Let's see. Anything else that we should touch on?
I don't think so. I think I think especially here at the launch site, the long range low altitude really didn't give us a whole lot to look at, and like we've been saying, the working conditions have definitely slowed some of the progress on certain projects. So I don't think there's been a whole lot of activity actually out here, even if we did have a better weather circumstance for the flight.
Um, sorry, I'm looking at this message in the background. Alex is pointing out something that we should mention, but then he follows it up with, "But we don't have shots to show it." So super helpful, Alex. um, oh man, so I'm gonna go ahead and touch on some questions. Um, we got one from Ulrich Mueller who says, "Will Okay, this is a little difficult to read. Will SpaceX clear every square foot behind Tower 2 they filled up now to restore the former shape of the gateway to Mars wall? What? Not much space behind will be left. Okay, so I'm guessing this uh, has to do with this area right here. Like if they're going to um, restore this so that the wall can go back there. Um, what do you think? I would say probably not.
Yeah, probably not. I think a lot of this space behind the tower is going to be used for water systems and other ground support that the tower is going to need. I highly doubt that we're going to see the Gateway to Mars sign come back, and even the SpaceX sign is questionable whether it would stay there.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. And if anything, um, we should probably expect more land to be taken up at some point, not less. Um, so they're in the process of trying to push that through right now, but with a land swap. But we don't know how long that's expected to take. Okay, next question uh, from Crane Man: Why is it so hard to drive the sheet piling into the ground? They have had to use two different systems to drive the sheet pilings into the ground. Um, I don't know. I
Yeah, I don't know. I've noticed that. I mean, I've noticed that they've had to pull out the old diesel hammer as well this week, and it seemed like I don't know that it's necessarily the ground conditions that they're having issues with, or if it's just the an alignment with the sheet piles that they're binding on each other as they go down, because they seem to be like going from pile to pile and like kind of alternating amongst a few to try and get them to get all the way down.
Yeah, and Alex was suggesting in the background here that it could have something to do with a dense clay layer that they're coming up against, so it may be difficult to push through that. Um, so yeah, I mean, different tools for different problems.
Yeah, because even today they've added 2 or 3 new ones that they were just using the vibration hammer on, and they seem to have been going pretty decently, whereas the last couple of days they pulled out that other rig.
Yeah. Last question from Todd Harris. How long are the chopsticks relative to the shot where you were talking about the actuators on the landing rail? Um, this is a confusing question.
I think he's getting at where how like if we were to look at the long chopsticks, where do the short ones stop at? Which would be the answer would be just past the lifting points, roughly.
Yeah, we
Which
can.
of course LR 11,000's in the way in that aerial footage.
Yeah, so they have 3 vertical members. Um, so if we look at this one again, with it being a little difficult, it would be like right here. So everything past this point is removed from the new set.
Yeah, and assuming that the OLM is the same distance from center of the tower as what pad A for what pad A is, you can kind of go by the fact that the lifting pins for the ship and the booster, but more so the ship, just because of the way they flip out. I believe it's going to be somewhere in that last little section of the short chopsticks. We can see the mounting brackets that whatever is going to be used to mount those lifting pins for the ship, or if the ship changes to a system that looks more like boosters at some point because of the catching ability, that last little section will be where the will be essentially center of vehicle.
Right. And just to re-point this out, so on the shorter set, and hopefully I'm seeing this correctly. So there's will be, I guess, 2 gas springs in the back on this side, um, one actuator right here, and then another 2 springs right here.
Yep, that's how I would look at it.
Next question from some random guy. When do you think the WDR will happen? Um, I don't know. That's a good question. I think with both the booster and ship, they are still doing other things. We haven't seen the hot stage ring move into the Mega Bay yet. Um, and they're still doing this work on the chopsticks. And given that they're doing this work on the chopsticks, I think there's a chance that they may want to repeat the test that they did with um, the booster test article. Um, so I think the reason this is still here is because they plan to use it again. We've also seen, well, we haven't actually seen them working on this, but there are signs that they have been. There's um, a few lift platforms out here. So I'm assuming that they've been doing some work on this. There was some damage to the stringers on one side for the where the lifting pins are, um, or sorry, the load point. So I believe they're doing some repairs on it potentially, which is why these are over here. But yeah, that's one thing I'm personally expecting is them to repeat this test before, um, at least before the launch, maybe before the wet dress rehearsal. But um, yeah, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think we're going to see this article on the mount again. Since we only saw the one arm do any of those previous tests, I think now that they've done the work on the second arm, I think a lot of those tests are going to get repeated. I do think we're probably within 2 or 3 weeks, maybe, of seeing vehicles on there. I mean, we did see today that a stacking ship stand actually arrived in the ring yards, and I actually did just see that ship 30 is on the move. But I think ship 30 is probably destined for a stacking stand soon, which would say that we're getting closer.
Yeah. Um, so George M asks, why would they need more land if they're not building any more towers? I would love to see a third tower. So there's some. That's a good question, especially if everything that they need for this tower would be constructed on the existing land. Um, I think they may just want to make the pad larger. I don't know. Um, I think another thing that I was kind of expecting was um, additional facilities out here, like specifically an air separation unit, so that they're able to produce liquid oxygen and nitrogen here, instead of having to truck it in. So like a continuous operation going to fill these tanks at all times. That's one thing that I would expect them to add here. And if they have a flame trench, then a building like that may be able to be down in this area out of the way of wherever that exhaust plume's going. Um, so yeah, that would be the biggest thing I would expect. But again, it's totally possible that they would just want to increase the footprint of the pad in general. And one thing to consider, um, that may become necessary, to move this back, just because anytime you do a launch, you risking catching this whole thing on fire, which they've already done multiple times, but it's not necessarily ideal. It's not a big deal, but it's also not ideal. So yeah, I would imagine they would want to just move this back a little bit so they're not worried about um, brush fires, essentially, because you have a lot of space around this one to prevent that. So yeah, I think you would probably want the same thing here. Cool. Let's see. I think that was the last question that we had. Um, and we also went probably twice as long as I was expecting the show to go today. So that's an accomplishment.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like we did good, and we had some good questions to guide us.
Yeah, I agree. Um, Somebody asked me in the chat, which they're lucky I just saw this. Hey, Zach, you were going to the X takeover. What happened? Um, yeah, I have a lot of things going on in my life, and I uh, had to cancel going down there. I, was excited to go initially, but I I also have my own channel, which I haven't released a video in like 2 months that I'm working on right now. I did think the launch was going to happen during this time off initially, but I think it'll probably be like at least 3 weeks from now, so I may still be able to go to that. But yeah, I don't know. I just had certain priorities that I had to take care of, so I ended up not going down there. But yeah, I'm sure it'll still be a great event. There's still tons of great speakers down there. Jared Isaacman as well too. So and it's going to be pretty great. I'll probably still watch it from here as well. Actually, wait, hold on. It's tomorrow, right? Today and tomorrow. I'm not sure. But yeah, anyways, so moving on, I guess we will probably call the show here today. And I want to thank BJ for being here with me. Just the two of us. It's the first time it's just been me and another commentator on here. So that was fun. And thanks to everybody in the back channels for posting the questions in here, since we didn't have Joe with us today. So definitely appreciate all of y'all. And if any of you guys have not hit the like button yet, please do us a favor and do that. It really helps us out. And even with the low altitude flyover today, glad we were able to update y'all on the progress going on at Starbase. And thanks all of you for joining us on this Saturday. And with that, I will pass it off to BJ. And actually, I don't know, maybe I'm going to have to do the sign off unless you want to.
No, you can. But thanks everyone for joining us. We definitely didn't think we would pull this much of a show together for the two of us and the pictures available. But glad that everyone was here, and I'll let you take it, Zach.
Cool. All right. Most engine cutoff, stage separation confirmed. Love you. Bye.